Welcome to the Autism Dad podcast. I'm Rob Gorski. Got a great show for you guys today. Deena Nathan is my guest. She is a mom of two and one with level 2 autism. We're going to talk about what her experience is like, what autism is like for her son, and give you guys some insights into what other families are dealing with so that we can all better relate and connect and be supportive and all that stuff. So everyone deserves to be validated. Everybody's experience is valid, even if it's different than yours. And there's always something we can learn from other people. So thank you so much for being here. I love these conversations with parents because it really helps to validate people and helps us to learn from each other, which I think is really, really important, especially now. So I hope you guys find this beneficial and enjoy. All right. Thank you for taking the time to be here. I really appreciate it. Could you take a second, introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about like who you are and your family, and then we're going to talk about autism in your life for like the next 15 minutes and get a glimpse as to what it's like so other people can, relate and realize that it's different than theirs. Because, it is.
My name's Deena. I live in the North Shore suburbs of Chicago. And you probably hear that in my accent as well. And I have two kids. My son, Hayden, is 5. He's on the spectrum. And I have a 17-month-old that I also am suspicious of being on the spectrum as well. And I live with our family, my dog, my husband, and yeah, I grew up in the town that I moved back into. And yeah, that's pretty much our family.
Okay, so take me into your home. Like, what does a typical day in the life look like for you guys? What is there? Is there like a particular challenge that you guys are kind of struggling with? And then what level was your son diagnosed as?
Yeah, so my son is level 2. He's non-speaking. Okay. He uses a device, and it's busy. And I think a lot of people don't realize that when you're talking to a family that has autistic kids or any type of like neurodivergence. I feel like we wake up and we immediately start going from like therapies to therapies, and especially because my son who is diagnosed, we go to a ton of therapy a day. I mean, he probably goes to 2 or 3 or 4 different providers, and I drive. And I think that, I don't even know what the percentage, but I had to stop working when my son was diagnosed just because I fully dove in and was like, I need to be the person that's doing all this with him. We typically wake up early and, my son eats breakfast, right? Like whenever someone's like, oh, my kid slept in until 8, I'm like, that's nice. And we go like straight to therapy at like 8 a.m. And I drive anywhere from 5 minutes to almost an hour to different therapies, which is kind of crazy because I am in the Chicagoland area and you would think that there's more providers around, but sometimes there's not, which is really challenging in itself, is finding the right people and testing and trialing all those out. So we're in different therapies, and I make sure not to over therapize Hayden too. And he's also in school. He's in like a mainstream private school with an aide. And so I take him there, which is about 30 minutes away from our home too. And so honestly, I feel like I'm just like a chauffeur a lot of the times, just driving around. And when he comes home, I want my son to just decompress from the day, just because it's a lot. I can't imagine working that hard. And he either watches his favorite movies, or we built a whole like sensory gym in the basement, and we're there, or outside if it's nice, which it is today, but might not be tomorrow.
Nope.
And then that's typically it. And then we eat dinner as a family. I make that like a number one priority. And sometimes it is a little crazy, and sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. And then we are very routine when it comes to bed. And I feel very lucky because I know that that's not the case with a lot of families in our shoes.
Is there a challenge? Is there a challenge you guys are struggling with?
Honestly, time.
I was going to say time seems like not your friend.
Right. I feel like the days go by so fast because we're just constantly driving from different therapies to different therapies. And that's like the biggest thing. Like I feel sometimes guilty for my youngest because he's in the car so much with me, driving Hayden from time to time. I feel like I really don't see my husband that much, even though he works from home, because we're just always gone. And just so busy, and then cooking dinner, and then you come home, get ready for dinner or get ready for bed, and then it's like the day is over and you don't feel like you're spending as much time with your kid because it's during either therapy or while they're decompressing from their really busy day, and you feel this weird guilt of like not having that like interaction with your kid because they're just so busy with everything. And that's my challenge in itself. And I think like yeah,
I was gonna say that's a very common.
Yeah.
I can totally relate to that because with my 3, everybody had therapy appointments. Each had their own
right
throughout the week, and it was. I mean, I was building my life around therapy appointments, which is really hard to do.
It is,
you know, but you have no choice, really. You've got to do what you got to do. Is there a recent win that you guys have celebrated in your family? It doesn't have to be big, you know, because like we celebrate all the wins, right? Big and small. So, do you guys have any recent ones that you want to share?
Yeah, my son actually started calling out for me and my husband. That was really cool. That was a very, very big win for us because he's non-speaking. He says yes and no, and that's about it. Sometimes help, those are good words to know. But yeah, he was in his room a couple weeks ago and started yelling out mom, which may to some parents seem nagging, but it was honestly the coolest thing that's ever happened in my life. And he started calling dad too. So that also was exciting for Kevin to be able to experience that. So that was a huge win just because not only was he able to vocally express that he needed us, but that's such like a big thing that's needed if he is in his room alone, that he needs us, and I'm able to run there. And he had to go to the bathroom, which was so cool that he was able to call me out and realize that. So that was a huge win.
That's
for
multiple
us.
wins.
Yeah.
That's right? A lot of wins. Well, congratulations.
Yeah.
Those are awesome.
Yes. Lots of tears happened. Won't lie.
I bet. That's so, and people outside of the community I don't think appreciate necessarily the importance of that because they don't know.
Right. Because that happens at like a 1-year-old or something. And, you know, I know some people who it didn't happen at all. So it's really cool.
Congratulations. I'm glad
Thank you.
That's really amazing. Okay. So can you describe your child for me? Like what are his strengths, support needs? Like, what does autism actually look like in your world?
Hayden's awesome. I say that all the time. He's probably the happiest person you'll ever meet, which is really a joy whenever anyone tells me that. Because he just always has a smile on his face and is always just super happy. In my mind, before I even knew what autism was, he was like my stereotypical autistic kid. Like, non-speaking, he is always just really happy. He stims from time to time and just happy to be there. And he's hyperlexic, like he'll read, he likes to line things up, and really loves numbers and a lot of games and stuff.
Oh yeah.
But he's just like the happiest child, which I always say is my number one goal as a parent, is just to make sure that my kids are happy, and he is just the happiest kid. But he is very fluent on his device. That was something that I really dove into. Like, I went to the company and took classes and everything and was able to really engage with him. And so I think because he's able to express his needs on there, that helps him be even happier, and how excited we are when he's able to tell us what he needs. So he's just like the happiest kid.
You're talking about like an AAC device, right?
Yeah. So he has an AAC device, and he is fluent on it. I mean, he can tell you what he needs. He can tell you how he's feeling. Nice. It's really cool. And I love how engaged like his classroom is with it too. I think it's the coolest thing, which it is. And he's just always happy. I mean, I've maybe seen him sad in his life like 2% of his life, which is really, I don't think anyone can say that about their kid.
You're doing something right?
I think that's just him.
Yeah, well, I mean, but it's also parenting too. Like,
yeah,
you've created an environment where he's comfortable and safe, and not everybody has that.
Yeah.
You know? So that's a definite reflection on you guys as parents. So congratulations. That's good stuff. That's really cool.
Yeah.
When we're talking about the outside world, is there something that you wish people outside of our community better understood about autism, about Hayden, about how like it impacts what's one thing that you would want them to know?
That our kids can hear and understand everything. I think a lot of times when you have a kid who's not vocal and not able to use their voice, people just brush right over it. They'll ask me questions versus Hayden, or they'll talk about Hayden when he's in the room. And sometimes a parent will give me a weird look if I'm like, oh, can we talk about that at a different time when Hayden's not here? Like, oh, he doesn't talk, it's fine. And that's not the case at all. He understands and empathizes and processes everything. And I think that's a really big misconception with any kid who has trouble vocalizing, whether they interpret it a different way or not. And I think that's a lot of like presuming competence is really difficult when you hear the word autism.
Yep.
Yeah. And so people immediately go to that stereotypical thing I was talking about before and don't think that Hayden can listen and do the things that we all can do. And that I think is the biggest misconception, is just to like talk to my kid. Even if he can't verbalize and vocalize back to you, like he knows exactly what you're saying.
Do you feel seen and heard from outside of the autism community?
Most of the times, but I think I'm lucky. I think I'm in a really different environment, and I always wish this for any parent that I meet. Most of my friends are in special education, which is great because they understand Hayden and kind of have taught me a lot about what I need to know. Both of my families, my husband's and my family, are really accepting. I've definitely lost a couple of friends by some things that were said that I didn't agree with. But in my community, I definitely am really lucky where I feel very supported. It still is lonely though. It's still very lonely.
Yeah. Even with support right. Doesn't actually, like, it doesn't address every need that we have as parents. And it does get very isolated and very alone feeling. So the same question, but it's geared towards the autism community. Okay. So like, if is there one thing that you wish other autism families better understood about autism and Hayden, and how, you know, like autism is in your world?
Yeah. I mean, I guess that like everything changes. There's nothing that's predicted out. I've loved meeting all of these autism community. I work with a lot of parents now because I switched my gears too. And I think that everyone, honestly, just like even with a neurotypical parent, they get so nervous about the future. And I think that a lot of times we don't like take a step back and just live for the day. No one's future is predicted. And so that's kind of what I think a lot of, including myself, because sometimes I get into that rabbit hole too. Mm-hmm. Just not really like taking the day by day and just thinking of the future like, oh my God, I need to do this, I need to do that. And then not appreciating those little or big wins. And I think that sometimes gets lost a little bit in the autism community. And it's hard. Like, it's hard to not think about those things, but it's really great to focus on the wonderful things, which is what I've been trying to balance myself. Of if Hayden does something amazing, I'm like, oh, this is great. Like, I should be focusing on this, not what's going to happen. Will he go to college? Like, that's so long away from now.
No, like you're talking about like living in the moment.
Right. Exactly. People need to live in the moment, and I know it's easier said than done, but it gets a lot easier to breathe when you are like that when it comes to your family.
Do you feel seen and heard by the autism community?
At times, yes.
That's interesting.
Yes, I definitely feel. I mean, I've made like a community here, which was really nice. And I think that because there are like a few different ways to approach it. One way, yes, to talk about our kids all the time, but also to focus on ourselves and who we are as people, which is what I focus on with parents, is like we also need to focus on those things ourselves, and kind of just coming out as a parent and then saying, yeah, my kid has autism, this is great, like I love being a part of the autistic community, and then them kind of trusting you a little bit more has helped a lot, by just trying to get to know the parent first, and then of course talking about the hardships. But I think that helps a lot too. Yeah. And listening to everyone as well, because everyone's different.
Well, that's the whole point of this series, is there's a lot of disconnect between parents who have kids in different levels.
Right.
You know? And I was talking to a parent the other day who their doctor diagnosed their kid as level 1 and level 2, which
I've heard of that a lot. Yeah.
Weird. Because then it's like, well, what do you, like, how do you, you know what I mean? Like, it's already confusing enough. Let's just make it more confusing. But,
right.
But, you know, I like, it's interesting to me how, like, we can feel less seen and heard inside of our own community than we do from people on the outside, which is, it shouldn't be that. You think it'd be the other way around. That's sort of the point of this whole series.
There's so many like weird arguments that happen from community to community, like the craziest things to fight about, which is crazy because we all should be coming together, because the most important thing is our kids, right?
Yep.
I mean, I get sometimes from like my moms, which I have a really tight group, but like, of course there's always going to be like jealousy or like, oh, your kid does this and my kid doesn't do this, and that sometimes is really hard to push through. Yeah. And I'm like, let's just focus on, you know, that we're all here together and that we should be supporting each other. And I think that sometimes gets lost a lot, especially with social media. It's super hard. Oh. That's why I found your page. I loved your page because you always talk about it. And yeah, it's tough. It's tough out there.
It's a tough world to exist in. It's even tougher now, I think, with everything going on around us. But, you know, I really appreciate like you sharing the way that you do, because I think it matters. And it sounds like you work with parents.
Yeah,
so I
do.
That's really cool. Do you want to just plug that real fast? Like,
sure,
like 30 seconds?
Yeah, so I do life coaching with parents who have kids with special needs. It's dfnconnectedgrowth.com if anyone wants to check out.
There you go.
And honestly, I kind of just have taken a lot with what I've learned being in the community, to kind of just really embrace being that parent. I mean, like I said, I love being open about it and talking about my journey, and I hope that other parents do too, because it just helps when you're open.
Yeah, well, it's empowering for you as a person, because that's how I started out. I was the first person to started this 17 years ago, something like that. Because there was like nobody, like you looked up autism back then, it was like Rain Man. And I was documenting I was using WordPress back then. I didn't know how to do it, but I was using it as like a diary or a journal, and I was just emotionally dumping in. I assumed that it was private. Why I assumed that? Just I didn't understand things back then, but it wasn't. And so because there was nothing else out there except for like clinical stuff, it got indexed in Google. And so when you would search autism in the early 2000s, it was my private journal that was being found by parents. And I started getting emails from people all over the world, and I'm freaking out thinking like, oh my God, how do you know that? Like, but what I found was that it is very therapeutic for me to do this. Yeah. I think it's what saved me. And I like knowing that something positive can come from the challenges that I've faced, right? By lighting up the path of people behind us or whatever. So, you know, it really is a big deal. And I appreciate you being willing to come on and share your journey, so we have another voice in the mix, so that we can see what life is like, you know, because it's not the same for everybody. And I think it's really important that we understand that.
It's what helped me a lot too. When my son was first diagnosed, like I knew it was coming, and then finding all these people, which is, I keep saying, like, I don't know what would have happened, 20, 30 years ago if this would have been the case, but so many people are open and honest about it, which is so cool to see because it makes you feel more seen and heard. And what you're doing is so great because then hopefully people are more encouraged to do the same, and it definitely helps.
It's less taboo now, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
It used to be, because there was a lot of pushback when I started, like, why would you share that stuff? And it's nothing bad. It's not bad stuff. It's just our version of parenting, right? So there shouldn't be anything. And I just, the way that I approach things, the way I've always approached things was to just the good with the bad, the ups and the downs, because I'm not a huge fan of like the toxic positivity because I think that's very hurtful for a lot of people. But I think if we can acknowledge that, there's good days and bad days. There's wins and losses, setbacks and progress. And it's just like anything else. It can be a little more dramatic, I think, for us, because the situations are more complex and maybe a little more, a little more going on behind the scenes, or a lot more going on behind the scenes. But yeah, I think it's great that people are doing this now and that we're, educating the world and sharing our stories so that we don't feel disconnected. Right. Cause even, you can be in a crowded room, right, and still feel very much alone because there isn't another person there who can relate to what you're thinking and feeling right now. So it matters, and you're making a difference, and I really appreciate that. So thank you.
Thank you. I could say the exact same to you because you definitely helped me a lot.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that. Before we go, I just want to say thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. Thank you for being seen and heard. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you guys all for listening and joining in and all your feedback and everything else. So I really appreciate it. You guys can find this podcast on any one of your favorite podcast listening apps, including the full video release on YouTube now. And we will talk soon. See you guys.